Hey teachers and hey teachers and educators. Hey teachers and educators and summit goers alike. Uh, Hello, Teacher Empowerment Summit relaunch viewers. This is Jesse with Teachers Starting Fires. You've probably seen me in a few of the interviews by now. As you know, we've got 3 new topics for this relaunch of our summit as well. So far, you can see 2 of them. Austin has a video up about breathing and different asanas that you can use and teach through your video classes as a resource to provide for you and your students. And then I believe yesterday you were able to see Karin present on effective group management. And if you have not seen those sessions, they should be up in days 1 and 2, so you can go and get those. This is the day 3 video. It is increasing engagement in video lessons. How do you do that? How do you make sure that even though we've switched to this new medium, your students, as the story I think I told in one of the welcome videos here, but you know, the parent that posted that they found their child playing with their dog during virtual class, and the girl had basically put up a cell phone photo or swapped her virtual background to be a photo of herself. And when her parent was like, you know, aren't you worried? She said, no, it's a gallery view of 20 people. They'll never be able to tell. And unfortunately, many of you may have that feeling as well, that could you even tell if your students were logged in when they were supposed to be, or are you having trouble getting people to log in? We've kind of heard a wide range. Some people, even in a elementary school teacher with about 95% attendance, even though she's in a Title I school, and that district's being one of actually the worst off districts financially per pupil funding per state, she was still able to, or that district was still able to help most people get internet if they need. Hopefully you've been keeping track. Sometimes I know here in Colorado, some local internet providers are offering free hookups and free internet for about 3 months right now as well. As, I mean, obviously a marketing thing for them, but it has given a lot of students the ability to get cheap or free internet as well. So anyways, with all that being said, I know your virtual classes, this is a topic a lot of teachers have interest in. So I've got a little presentation we're gonna go through, and presentation, I will admit, is put together quickly to get this to you as soon as possible. A lot of good material in there. Right now, I work in e-learning as well. If this was actually going to be, you know, a month-long course that was put together and giving credits with full assessments and everything, obviously a different experience. But hopefully you will see some of those engagement methods, some of that change in the presentation as well. And most importantly, I believe you will be able to leave this presentation with actual practical ways to increase your engagement, and hopefully kind of a better step moving forward for at least the rest of this school year that's being taught virtually. All right, so we're gonna jump over, get into this. I will share the screen. Excellent. And we can jump in back up to the top slide. All right. So we're going to be doing increasing engagement in Videoland, basically how to keep being an amazing teacher in the brave new world of teaching virtual classes. Right now, before we even get in, just take a breath first, but take a breath in before we get right into the content. Take a moment, if you have not directly thought about it lately, try to get a hold of a couple of your feelings about what it has been like to switch over to video lectures, to distance learning. You know, so find some of those feelings. I imagine there's some frustration in there. Hopefully you can find some silver lining feelings as well, a couple highlights. But being able to kind of process your own thoughts about it is going to be a great place to start for the first few of these slides. So this presentation is not going to be highly technical or platform specific presentation for a couple reasons. One, everybody can be on different platforms. So I don't, you know, I don't want to try to put together a full technical presentation for every single platform. Plus, one reason I don't want to do that, I'm not necessarily an expert in every single video conferencing platform ever, right? That should be pretty obvious. Nobody is. And there's already a ton of free training out there, and we get to that a little bit later in this presentation. But do not worry, you don't have to, and I would also argue you don't need to be an expert in these to change some of your methods right away to increase engagement, although obviously getting skilled at your field or at the new tool you're using is going to help. All right, so it's not highly technical on specific video conferencing web platform details, and you can find the details you need online. What it is, though, is a guide to help the forest regrow. If you are, I guess, Colorado, California, I know especially we have lots of forest fire issues lately, so you probably have heard this metaphor, probably familiar with it, and if not, we'll go through it. So, but basically a forest, if you get a bunch of dead wood, bunch of underbrush, a forest fire is a natural occurrence that has to happen in order to clear out that undergrowth to kind of open up and put nutrients back in the soil. I imagine a botanist out there can go into a little more detail on how that works, but there are certain types of pine cones that will only basically once a fire hits them, that's what causes the resin to burn off the pine cone to open, allows regrowth to happen. So even in places, I've gone hiking in a few spots that, over a decade or so, we would go hiking a year or two after a major forest fire, and it's just like death and destruction everywhere. But in only, less than a decade later, hiking the same areas is now this giant field of, or giant hillside, mountainside of trees regrowing. So the reason that I bring this metaphor up is for your video lessons, I know it can feel completely different. It feels a little bit like some of the world that we might be used to is burning away. I know it's been a huge adjustment for tons of teachers and lots of people whose jobs aren't even being in direct in-room contact with groups of people you're trying to manage. So it's a huge change for the education sector. But this presentation is going to be a guide to help make sure that even though what might feel like a devastating forest fire is taking place in your life and your profession right now, that at the end of it, you'll be able to regrow even stronger, that you'll come out of this, not with the actual topsoil burned and salted and nothing growing for 10,000 years, but instead actually coming out of here as a stronger forest. So I've got 6 basic points and a couple sub-points under them to go through. The first one is going to be attitude related, is that change is good. If this is not striking you as true right now, that is one reason that I am bringing it up as well. The idea of change is good. Okay, fun. Yeah, the enjoyment of video. So change is good. Basically, there we go. I knew it'd show up eventually. All right. So change is good. The summer school blackout story is, I believe, yeah, it was in the intro video for the entire, the welcome video for the entire summit. But the summer school blackout, the quick version is, so I've taught in summer school or summer camps for about a decade before I got my master's in curriculum instruction and got into teaching. And then I also was at a school with a Peace Corps volunteer teacher, or past Peace Corps volunteer teacher, a couple of them at that school actually, and then a third teacher who had been kind of traditional education beforehand. Now we were teaching a summer school, there was a blackout, but and we had kind of 2, morning block and afternoon block. So at lunch we got together, the Peace Corps teacher and I, we had a blackout, we didn't even think about it. We got together and we were like, oh crazy, there was a blackout, and then we had normal conversations. We had just adapted our classes to what had to be taught at the time. Just didn't use electricity, no issue whatsoever. There were huge windows in all the classrooms. Lighting was not an issue. The third teacher had been planning to show a video, not necessarily a great sign already, but planning to show a video, and because of the blackout had apparently spent something like 3 hours in the classroom just saying, well, without power we can't do anything, so entertain yourselves and hopefully we'll get power back soon. And by the time we got to lunch, our 2 classes were ready to rotate to the third teacher. And the third teacher's class, though, was so out of control, so crazy, we actually had to close the school the rest of the day, which was ridiculous. But the reason I bring that up is basically like, as something that we're used to changes drastically, is this going to be something that, you chat with your teachers in a little bit, there was no huge change, you move forward, it actually gave you an opportunity to add to your teaching ability? Or is this something that you're gonna, suddenly realize like, yeah, is it going to be something that added to your teaching ability, came out better, or is this the kind of change that destroys everything, everything falls apart, and your career, your school, whatever has to be dismissed forever because of it? So, which teacher will you be? Are you going to be? Oh, get back there. Which teacher are you going to be? Are you going to be the teacher that, in a few months is like, wow, look at all these amazing things I learned from quarantine. Look at these new skills I have. My students, were really happy. They were amazed that I was able to make my lessons so engaging. Or the teacher that the students are going to be like, wow, like, we didn't even go anymore, and we just put up our own video virtual background of ourselves because the teacher never checked on whether we were even in the classroom. I think we all know who we want to be, but it obviously can be a little difficult to know how to choose between there. So the first step to choosing to be that teacher, the teacher we want to be, is deciding to believe that change is good during this process. I got knowledge, skills, and attitudes up there. That's a huge part of, all the e-learning I do now as well. One of the ways to make learning advantageous is to include attitudes in it. If somebody has the exact same knowledge and skills as another student or another employee, and one of them has superior attitudes and approaches to life, obviously that the person with better attitudes is going to win. Knowledge, skills, attitude, another place that shows up, actually the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Regardless of where you stand on any of that, they do a lot of gun education. I ran into it in summer camp a lot. And what I liked about their training is that they always teach using guns requires knowledge, skills, and attitude, because they absolutely don't want somebody with the wrong attitude towards safety, or the wrong attitude towards gun use, or the wrong attitude towards listening to instructions to be anywhere near a firearm. And so I've always enjoyed that. And as a necessary part of any kind of teaching is having the right attitude. And that's something we teach our students, but as a teacher, you have to make sure you've got the right attitude for whatever you're facing as well. All right, so basically, change is good can be summarized by in a next school year, when we finally get through this, hopefully, and there's a vaccine out and all that. Your students who say my teacher made quarantine amazing by what, and that's what we're going to want to fill in with this the rest of this presentation. So, second point: don't put old square pegs in new round holes. The essence here is that our current teaching methods will not fit into the new framework of online lessons. Obviously, the knowledge and content is good. A lot of what Austin and I do at Teachers Starting Fires is already trying to coach teachers, help teachers take all of the best parts of teaching and switch to a world where, as especially right now, students have immediate access to all the knowledge of the world. So memorizing facts is nowhere near as useful, kind of on Bloom's taxonomy, as actually being able to evaluate, analyze, create, and create the cognitive kind of meta processes that allow them to be really functional human beings. So don't put old square pegs in new round holes means new versus old. Quick example, if many of you may have seen this, if you haven't, you can look it up, but the Kennedy-Nixon, the moral, however true, of the story that they always tell is that as they were doing their first TV interview, Kennedy just listened to the experts who said, hey, you have to put makeup on, and Nixon said, that's ridiculous, I'm not going to wear makeup. And especially with the older technology, the makeup made it so that Kennedy looked calm, collected, well lit, and the lack of makeup made Nixon look, kind of washed out, sweaty, less secure, less calm, I guess. And that people listening to the debate on the radio thought that Nixon won, people seeing it thought Kennedy won. But the idea is that what Kennedy did win at in that debate is, adapting to a new technology and realizing that the old method, the old thoughts that he had towards radio or makeup or whatever, were going to have to change. So same idea here. One thing to think about is if you have, I know this is becoming more common practice, if you have never seen a video of yourself teach, that can be useful. I would also say record some of your classes, go back and watch them, take them as a student and see how engaging you are throughout that class, see how often you're redirected to do something. But if you have not seen yourself teaching, you may not actually realize how often you are checking on students, how often you are making eye contact with them, answering questions, all that. And so without really a detailed knowledge of what you were doing in the classroom before, it's going to be harder to bring that into the video world. And then, of course, we have a completely different kind of sense of connection when you are potentially one of 20 little floating faces on a screen for the kids. All right, now I also put in what rules. the idea of whatever rules you thought might exist in your classroom, you might need to throw them out and start thinking about, okay, what are the actual rules about how video chatting works? What, what can you do? You can no longer, so for example, proximity, kind of discipline through proximity, the student that's a little boisterous, whatever, and you just walk calmly by their desk and, tap the corner of their desk and they realize they should pay attention and focus more. That doesn't work anymore. You can, adapt that, but the idea of that rule applying is no longer true. Whereas an entirely new set of rules that you're going to have to discover and create is going to apply to these video classes. All right, so that was new versus old. Basically, just don't assume that any of your old teaching methods will fit into the new video lesson format. Instead, go into this with that open mind that change is good, that we're going to find the best way to do things, and that you might not know that best way yet. All right, so 3, practice and play. This is the part I don't have every single software mastered because I don't teach video lessons in every single software. I keep running into teachers who are using some new experimental ones I've never heard of or something the district provided. So not going to be able to provide that for everything, but whatever your software is, you would want to practice with it and play with it and become good at it. And yeah, it's a pretty straightforward point, but one that should not be overlooked. And I know it might not seem fun, this thing that you perhaps are dreading and not wanting to interact with and annoyed that you have to use. But if you still have another 3-4 weeks left of using it, spending a couple hours on an extra day that you'd rather not be playing with this software, but taking a couple online classes, taking a couple, even YouTube tutorials on it, and learning everything you can about this software is going to make it easier for you. What you would want to avoid, what I would want to avoid, and it's happened to me with new softwares I've learned, is that I, finally get around to watching a whatever video editing or authoring program tutorial, and I find these shortcuts that could have saved me hours of time or embarrassment or whatever over the last 5 months of my life that I postponed watching this class. So get into some tutorials as soon as possible once you watch the rest of the videos on the summit, especially if you don't have your VIP all access pass yet, and are going to lose access after the 1 weekend event, just like a normal summit. Then watch those videos and afterwards dive into some training on this practice and play here. Break down the skills till you can do them. Why I bring that up is a lot of times the initial reaction from, and whether you've are or not old, I think is less important than whether you feel like you're too old to learn a software. And I get, like, at any age, people have seen something new and been like, God, it's just not worth it. I know I can't even remember what it was, but it was one of those moments where, like, who knows, TikTok or something, or when Snapchat first came out, and I was not super old, obviously, and still my reaction, to some software 10 years ago was like, yeah, it's not worth learning anything new. And then I thought, oh no, like I can't start thinking that way now. So same idea. What you do to learn a software, instead of reacting and being like, I can't possibly learn Google Classrooms or meetups, I can't learn Zoom conference calls, is breaking down the skills till you can do them. Essentially, interacting with a computer is broken down to the very basic, deciding what you want, and then literally just moving your hand with a mouse to click in the right spots. Now, if you are smart enough to teach a classroom of 15 to 28 students, depending on where you are, and you are smart enough to be a teacher and not have gone insane yet and wandered away or run screaming out of the classroom, you're definitely smart enough to learn where and how to click a mouse on your screen to make that software work. Some of this is that attitude again, but that's why I put it on here. Keep breaking that skill down until it's something you can do and don't have to be worried about. All right, so into some of the actual engagement. The last 3, so points 4, 5, 6 are all about the actual engagement methods. Rapid change, keeping engagement. This is just something, from e-learning, from jump cuts on YouTube content. Like a couple different YouTube things come to mind. One, jump cuts. So somebody will film a lesson and literally just like so they say a few sentences, stand closer, stand further away. Sometimes it's the exact same video. They'll just record a 5-minute, 5-minute video of them talking, and all they do is speed up and slow down some parts of the video, or jump cut, so they'll cut out like 1 or 2 second segments, breaks in between things. Yeah, so they'll break down, they will they will cut out a few seconds at a time, so that as you watch the video, it jumps really rapidly. Now, we're not doing that in video lessons, but I bring it up because these little micro breaks in attention are the rapid change that's keeping engagement. So instead of watching, mentally at least, instead of watching one 5-minute video, you're actually watching a whole bunch of 20-second videos. And that's what, every time that camera angle changes, you kind of re-engage and click in and watch it further. Another thing that happens if you watch any dance videos on YouTube from studios, they will have basically a steady cam, just a camera that slides really well. It's balanced out by some weights and stuff. But they're essentially, instead of putting it on a tripod and dancing, the entire time they're zooming in and out with this camera and kind of panning back and forth. Now, it doesn't really change the dance that's happening, but this constant sense of change and watching and flowing is creating that sense of rapid change, that you're always reorienting yourself so that you watch this dance video the whole way through. All right, so jump cuts, YouTube content. There we go. Yeah, a few options that we can use though as teachers. So we're not going to be able to jump cut as often, but we can do those even just on our face. So if we've got our face up, instead of trying to go through an entire giant, I guess, lecture and just wondering if people are paying attention. For instance, I know right now there's a good chance you may have had earphones in, and this is on your phone or tablet. Maybe they're Bluetooth, and you wandered over to the kitchen to grab a snack, or you were in some other room trying to listen but not actually watching, which is fine. It works pretty well for this presentation. But if you have any kind of visuals, any content, switching between your face and back to the visual checks and all that is going to help out. For instance, there we go. Even just by cutting that film right now, you're going to, suddenly you have another person to watch. It's just me right back here, depending how Zoom is recording. Maybe you've had the little, face up or whatever. But so this is what you've like, by having the switch, you now have me on camera talking to you. It breaks your attention for a second. And then when we switch back to sharing again, your brain will be re-engaging with what the new item you're viewing is. So being able to change as a teacher from your face to what you're showing, from your face to, for instance, let's see here. Yeah, screen share. So Zoom, for instance, has a whiteboard that you can then draw on. So, like, draw how you feel about learning, that there's more engagement possible in your classroom. The other neat thing, and I use this in tutoring at times, let's see here, we've got basically annotate is that somebody then could draw on this whiteboard from their own computer, but you can choose new colors. You could have a student, add hair. Obviously, this could be related to your own content level, graphs, charts, all that, diagrams expressing what you just taught. It's kind of the neat thing there. So jumping back into this though, you now had 3 different small visual changes going on, and this is part of what that rapid change is. So some visual checks, simple sketches, depending, so I mean, if you're teaching geography or history, okay, so just on a separate sheet or somewhere in your notebook, draw out the outline of the country we're talking about and hold it up to the camera. So that, hold it up to the camera. And another thing that does is you're actually coaching them on a physical motion that is going to require them to move. But the simple sketches also, if you are in a gallery mode, you will immediately see if that student, has their video up of themselves as a virtual background. You'll be able to see that 19 students have this up. And by kind of creating this habit of every minute or two, everybody has to hold something up in different ways, it really takes away the opportunity to wander aimlessly through your house with the wrong video up, right? Interactions as well, just like in a classroom where you'd call out different students, you're probably carrying this over. But one thing is increasing, I would say, the frequency with how often you're checking, and being able, depending on the platform, if you need to scroll between different pages to see everybody, making sure that you're not just calling people from that first page of visible students. Another neat thing that talked about a little bit more, but some platforms, Zoom offers it as a virtual background. Again, if you're not familiar with them, I'll throw one up quickly. This depends largely on the capabilities of your computer, green screen, or anything else. So choose virtual background. Got a few of them, some that just come with the program, so I can be on a beach. You can also choose more specific things that might relate to what you're teaching. For May the 4th be with you that's coming up, a Star Wars joke for the people that are up for that. The other one we've had a little fun. You can, like, pull up a giant squirrel, interact with it, act like you're terrified. Not necessarily for you, but depending on the age of your students, giving them something to interact with, some new way to make presentations. It's always going to be varying, but this gives you something. And also collecting some of these videos to have something to do is a workable assignment, as well as creating virtual backgrounds. Another neat one too is, we'll see how well this works. Hold on. Excellent. All right, that's a little funny because my shirt, but you can basically, depending on the computer, you can choose certain colors. That's amazing. Choose certain colors to be the background and be able to, so this one right now, the color of my wall is the green screen, but you can do it for like a solid colored shirt, and you can see how, like, my arm is there, and now I can interact with, like, this floating heart model. But green color is preferred, is what you're going to get. So depending, there we go. Depending on your software, you're going to have some options, backgrounds, everything that you can interact with there. And you can also require actions. And I've got a little bit more on this in a future slide, but again, requiring actions like showing a sketch that you have, but also requiring actions like literally just, leaning forward, everybody lean forward till your forehead's near the camera. Everybody high five the camera. Things like that, that if you have that gallery view, it's really easy to see everybody's engaged. It also, the other reason to do this is not just that you see them engaged, but it literally creates an engagement with them every 30 seconds to a minute to 4 seconds or whatever. Not 4 seconds, 4 minutes. And so as you create those engagements, suddenly students start to build up this, like, mental internal habit that, oh, I'm going to have to be here and engaged the whole time because I'm constantly doing things, right? All right, so that is visual checks. Implied actions, I have this on here because I want to talk about most of the implied actions that we had. What I mean by that is, if you are in a classroom, there's a large number of implied actions of, staying in your desk, facing forward, taking notes, all these things that I think students do largely out of habit and just like general social pressure, of that's what you do in a classroom. A lot of those don't apply anymore. So you need to start building up what the new implied actions are. You need to start building up what is proper behavior in a Zoom classroom. And just like the whole square peg, round hole idea, do not assume that whatever you had in the classroom is going to work here in Zoom as well, or in meetups or classroom, whatever you're using. But for virtual classrooms, you can't assume that just forcing implied actions from one environment into a new one is going to work. All right, so that being said, you need to define what the new actions are. And I would just, like any rule, I always teach, if you, any rule, anytime you have power, anytime you have authority, your authority and power will last a lot longer if you work on building. It's kind of a study of 5 major types of power in the workplace, but one of them is referential power. You want people to basically give you authority, not just because you're the teacher, but because they find a value in giving you authority, and they find that the rules that you're providing for them are reasonable and give them the things they need in life, right? So you want to be creating rules that overall improve the classroom experience. I mean, similar to having classrooms generate their own rules, a practice a lot of us are familiar with, but keep in mind, like, you could really do the same exercises with your students to generate new rules for the Zoom classroom. You might even be surprised what type of rules students will suggest, because they're a little more used to that platform, maybe a little more used to the virtual world, to distance, all that. So being able to see what rules students create for themselves can be valuable as well. All right, we are on to point 5 here. I hope you are getting some out of this video, some thoughts, some points to start applying. New resources. As a teacher in the classroom, your students, and this is kind of a big point Austin and I have been pushing for the last couple of years, is, and many teachers are on the same page, using the old method, obviously, of like memorizing facts, spitting them out on the tests, doesn't help. And a lot of people will say, well, we actually do all of these, tests and projects and everything else so that you learn how to set goals, you learn how to think as a team, you learn how to work with other people, you learn how to write, and all these skills are things that obviously are valuable, but essentially, if you say like, well, they're learning these history facts because yes, it's important to know history, but also because we want them to work as teams, we want them to know how to organize their thoughts, and we want them to know how to operate, and how to think through their thoughts and organize their thoughts, right? Well, I would argue everything except the one memorizing history facts, all of those other things can be taught 1,000 different ways. That's a huge part of what experiential education is. Like through rock climbing, we teach you self-confidence and the ability to set goals and the ability to overcome your fear and all these things. But what we have been pushing for the last few years is that it doesn't make sense to have people who have Wikipedia on microcomputers in their pocket try to memorize a few select random facts. And more students, I would say the students I've worked with, when they say, this is dumb to memorize a bunch of facts when I can look them up, it's really hard to argue with that. And I think obviously having facts memorized is good, but I would definitely say nobody memorizes facts for the rest of their life based off of needing them for a test that they know they just have to pass once somewhere, right? So you happen to learn facts and have them memorized through the use of them, the application of them. And so as teachers now, especially in this video world and in Videoland, all our students have all the knowledge of the world at their fingertips at any second. So you could either look at this as like, well, I can't stop them from cheating, or the more appropriate reality is that it's not cheating to look up facts anymore. So you need to be letting them use facts and find ways to use this, knowledge of the world at their fingertips in order to still have them grow as human beings and developmental skills. So a couple things to do. All the knowledge of the world, limiting the time frame. So in your classes, pretty much at any age to some extent, but being able to create assignments that involve research, looking things up, finding websites, finding online tools. You can have them do that as part of class. Give them 3 minutes, another new resource you have, just like before, but you're on your computer, so you don't have to leave the front of the classroom, set up a timer, get it going. Have a timer app up on your computer, share that app out to the screen. Say you have 3 minutes to list 3 ways that you can apply this skill. You have 3 minutes to go find 2 websites that you think are actually good, and they can't be on the first page of Google results, right? So creating an assignment that is real time, that is one of those engagement breaks that makes people go out, not out, but go across tabs, I guess, out into the world and get that information for you. You also have unlimited and instant access to every online resource, game, video, whatever. So if you did not use YouTube videos and all these other things heavily before, you no longer even have to edit them into a single PowerPoint. You can, literally have a page of links for the day, and you either share those out with everybody. Oh, goodness. It must be morning. But you either share them out with everybody or you through a chat or whatever form you have. You can also link assessments. So like throughout your own lesson, you can send out a link to a survey and have everybody take a 4-question assessment in the middle as your formative assessment. But these are the things that essentially, instead of, and I think this goes back to change is good, the new change is that your students 100% of the time they're interacting with you have a computer screen up in front of their face. And you can either see that as a reason that you can't possibly teach effectively anymore, or as a reason that you've never been a more effective teacher with more capabilities. Some other new resources that show up, the in-platform options. So I kind of showed that, the virtual backgrounds, using filters, color editing, depending again on platforms, and breakout rooms. Some of these platforms you can pre-assign even. So you can say, hey, we're going to break out into 4 separate mini Zoom calls for the next 5 minutes. At the end of the 5 minutes, this is what I need you to present as a group, and then bring them all back in and have the presentations. Gives you, almost a forced more accurate. You no longer have to like rally everybody up and have them come back and sit down in their seats. You put a timer up and you're like, hey, In 5 seconds, I'm going to switch back to the gallery view, so finish it up. All right, and then some in-house options, and that is literally in their houses because that's where the students are. Things they could not do before. Again, change is good. Scavenger hunts, costumes. Scavenger hunt is, so for example, teaching math, getting to fractions. This is a younger age, but you can make it appropriate at pretty much any age. So go find something in your house that relates to fractions, right? And maybe someone brings a pizza cutter, maybe somebody brings a measuring cup. You could limit it to the kitchen, you could limit it to the bedroom, you could limit it to, wherever. But create scavenger hunts that make people actually get up, move, go find things in their house, come back. Make the screen something that they're excited to run back to share, not something that they can't wait to get away from, because that's where the boring class happens, right? Another thing they have now is costumes. Everybody has all the costumes they need or want. You can do themed days, you could do themed lessons, you can create assignments and give people 4 minutes to go create costumes and come back. Again, I mean, I think we're at a point now that if your only focus is to pretend nothing has changed and force people to meet certain standards for tests that they may not even be able to take in person this year, you're going to create a world of problems for yourself that aren't enjoyable. And I think it will work out a lot better for everybody if we find ways instead to take the situation we're in and have, students amazed and excited and all these things that even if we, when we get back to normal classrooms, whether it is the beginning of next year or halfway through or the semester, first part of 2021, who knows, but create things that people will be excited to have continue into the classrooms. Don't see this entire opportunity as like, well, education is going to suck for the next however many months, but we have to stick with just this terrible education until we can get back to real learning, right? Same thing, if you don't change your framework, if you don't change kind of your square peg for the new round holes, you're going to have a lot of options or a lot of difficulties. Also, so in-house options, adventures, assignments outside, assignments looking through windows, assignments getting fresh air, not during class probably, but oh man, but creating adventures for people to go out on, that's going to make a pretty big difference, and it's going to be something. What is it, Matt? Yeah, so if you find Matt's video in the summit, he has an entire section about gamification as well as about his adventure paths. But you could, basically a short version is you create different assignments. So you could create like one slightly more standard, hey, do these worksheets. Your adventure option, instead of doing this one fraction worksheet online, your adventure option is to go take photos of some of things outside that teach all the fraction concepts and show us that tomorrow. Same thing, at higher levels of math or science or anything else there. All right, and finally, ways to increase engagement, exploring the unique. One of my many hobbies, I have been on an improv comedy team for the last, oh man, it's like 10, 11 years now. But we, as part of this, can't get together. And, sometimes sometimes we're performing for big audiences. A lot of times it is really just a way to get together with friends that we've had for 10 years and play some silly games. But one thing we've been doing, so this is unique ways to improvise, is as we switched over, realized we could no longer have rehearsals at our houses like we've been doing with each other. What we had switched to instead is Zoom shows. It took us a couple weeks, but we put together basically Zoom games, and we were shocked, and some other comedy kind of groups and troops are finding this out too. But, a normal audience, maybe we get 20, 30 people together, and we had probably over 100 people watching our first show, even with basically no marketing, no advertising, and got good feedback on it. The reason I bring this up, though, is that we had to find ways to use Zoom to still deliver the core of improv, even though we've also seen online versions of improv comedy that are awful, because they're like, for all sorts of reasons. They tried to fit the old version of improv into the new video call format and failed because they were trying to create the outer shell in the new shell instead of take the inner core essence of that forest and move it, into the regrowth post-fire, whatever. But same thing that we're trying to do as teachers, which is why I bring this up. Things that we did, things to think about, things that we do for the improv games is you have these new options. For instance, video and audio now can be independent. So we have a couple games that we played. You can play guessing games where, so one student or person would blindfold themselves. I wouldn't suggest it be you as the teacher, but blindfold themselves. Other students put up different slides or images. Other students put up different slides or images in as their virtual background, or could even as simple as card games. Again, they draw pictures or they put an idea or a word up on their screen on their notepad, and you play guessing games where the blindfolded student is trying to guess it based on hints, things like playing Taboo and other versions of games like that. But that's just one of that kind of concept there, that because video and audio are independent, you have new options. Another one that was popular, you can have put up one person's video, but their microphone is muted, and another person's microphone, but their video is turned off. And so you can, one person is sitting there trying to act out something, and the other person's trying to explain it. Might be slightly more appropriate for into the high school age range, where you might have a little more trust in the maturity and ability to think through this. But again, we're going to be acting out this event from history. We're going to be acting out this scene from the book. So, this student is going to be the body, this student is going to be the voice. Let's see what we can get. It's great entertainment for everybody else, as well as that actually requires, it's hard to act something out just with your body, and it is hard to dub over somebody else's body in a way that still teaches historical facts. So I think you're gonna, you have a lot of potential there, but again, we were looking not at how do we force what's normally a show with 6 people into a video chat, but instead, how do we use a video chat to create the best elements of a show? Virtual backgrounds we've talked about. Chat bar use also, so being able to have students chat just to you or to the entire group, getting feedback that way too. So like a chat bar, one thing is it would not work in improv, like it was a webinar, but you can't have 100 or more video participants yell suggestions, because it doesn't work like a real room where you could hear different suggestions and choose one. So instead we say, all right, in the chat bar, please share with everybody the suggestion for a place 2 people could meet in secret, something like that. And you have this huge amount of response, and then you can sit there and interact with them and be like, all right, thank you, Sarah, for this response, thank you, David, for this response, and kind of list through the different feedback, the names, what you're getting, and use the chat bar creatively that way as well. And then also just finally timing and interactions. Again, we had to change that. A couple things we just know we can't talk over each other. So we're all focused, and this kind of relates to group discussions, but focused on very concisely sharing a point and then letting the group process it, and then letting somebody else very concisely share a point. And so it changes the way that we have discussions, but it doesn't change the essential nature and goal of those discussions. And then another form of interaction. So we have this game where kind of Hollywood Squares or Brady Bunch or, standard Zoom grid gallery view. And we normally in real life would step forward to say hey, I've got, I'm going to go now. Everybody else give me a second to say my joke. But we can't do that anymore. So instead what we have is we found just leaning really close to the camera. So yeah, I might as well stop sharing there for a second. But so we've got all these screens, they're all zoomed out. You have a bunch of little faces. Just by leaning in, changing the proportions, not only does that make the entire, all the audience look at your one video screen because you've leaned in, but then also it tells everybody else hey, I'm about to talk. So a visual way to do that. Similar to hand raising, but again, here is not going to, again, in tiny gallery view squares, not very easy. If this is hand raising now, something as simple as that is that seeing a hand, maybe there's a palm reader out there now that I've got this HD camera, we can get some futures told. But if you hold up a hand like this, that is much clearer to the teacher that you have something you want to say as well. Same thing to the group. I really like just leaning in, especially in gallery view. If you have that blown up on a giant flat screen TV, I apologize for that. But if you have it down in gallery view, it's off to the side. Just leaning into your camera is a great way to have people look over and know that it's time to interact with you or that you're about to talk. All right, so to finish it out, change is good. And without that attitude, you're gonna have a really hard time during this quarantine. But thankfully, you were at the summit and you are in this presentation finding ways that change is good. Old square pegs don't fit in new round holes. Anytime you think, wow, man, like the video conferencing is awful because I, can't do X, try to reframe it. We have never, as teachers, had a better ability to interact more directly, more rapidly with more students. So find a way to use these new round holes to deliver incredible education. Practice and play, whatever your platform is, whatever technology you suddenly have to adapt to and use, go adapt to and use it, and practice and play with it until it's fun. Rapid change keeps engagement, just something to keep through. Watch one of your own videos as a recorded lecture, take it as a student, and try to, you could even like meta watch yourself. So film yourself on your phone, watching yourself off your computer, and then you could go back and watch yourself watching yourself and count how often you actually have to do something in order to stay engaged, right? And I think that would be a really great way. Go back, listen to your own presentation and be like, oh, that was not the most engaging thing ever. So be able to increase that. All right, so we've also got new resources. Some of the options there, things you can do because students are in their house, things you can do because they have the internet in their hand, things they can do because they are in whatever web platform you are using. All three of those things should be bringing a huge trove of new resources to you, not creating undue stress. And finally, improvise with the unique is basically looking at your environment, seeing what is different about this environment than what you have had in the past, and using this new environment in creative, unique ways that you could not before to still deliver your core teaching method. So our message at Teachers Starting Fires has basically always been, get out of this. All right. There we go. So our mission at Teachers Starting Fires, the reason we have the Teacher Empowerment Summit, all of these things that Austin and I have done is under the idea that basically we've seen a lot of instruction that the mission of the teacher, what they're trying to accomplish, not just the fact delivery, but we as teachers, that it's not just about facts, right? It's disappointing how much is just about standardized testing now and shouldn't be. Maybe that'll change a little bit this semester too, as suddenly nobody can take certain standardized tests. But we know as teachers, the essence of what we're trying to do is basically develop future members of society into the wholest, greatest, most thinking, creative, considerate, cognitive people that we can, and put them out in the world, create the ability to work together to produce meaningful things for society. All of these grand ambitions, that's really what underlies teaching. For some teachers, maybe it is purely just a passion for that subject matter, but I would say the truly great teachers that fall into that category even, they see a purpose to the subject matter. No, I've never met a history teacher who loves their subject, but without some kind of context for greater meaning. They love their subject because it does this, or they love their subject because it unravels the meaning of the world to them, which really I think is what a lot of teachers find their subjects do, right? Science teachers, you are teaching the secrets of the physical universe. Humanities teachers, you are teaching the secrets of the human soul. History teachers, you are teaching basically, again, secrets of the human soul, but from the perspective of historical things and how we can learn from them. In every case, amazing teachers are taking what they know, what they love, and using it to help students know and love that subject as well. And at Teachers Starting Fires, we've always said you can teach that core essence of what you're teaching, as well as even the surface layer of the facts with which you are teaching it, or the facts through which you are teaching it, and that all of that can be taught in 1,000 different ways, and that those ways should be engaging, they should be experiential, they should be meaningful, they should be authentic. And I think video lessons is just another way, in the same way that I think you can teach all of those grand things with rock climbing or with swimming or with archery, or with science or math or history. I think you can also teach all of those things on a video call, to a virtual classroom, and you can find a way to make it incredible and engaging. And I hope that this presentation helps you get there a little bit, and that I hope this summit does as well. So with all of that being said, thank you for being at the summit. Thank you for watching this video. And I hope you have a great rest of this very strange school year, and that we might see you around Teachers Starting Fires as you start your own fire. So with that, bye.